You know, on the surface, this might have kind of looked like an uneventful Dover race, but on paper at least, when you look at the stat sheet, the way Hendrick ran so well, Kyle Busch continues to extend his top 10 streak, there are a lot of interesting little stats and pieces of data that we get to talk about today. So let's talk about Dover. How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. It's a Monday night episode. Dover was rained out yesterday on Sunday. Race was run earlier this afternoon, and we're here to talk about it. I don't miss a beat. Rain or shine, I am here. And we have a pretty good amount of things to talk about today. First half of this race was outstanding, but I'll give you guys my overall groovy gauge rating of the race. At the end of the show, we're going to look at our top finishers of today's race, and then of course we're going to look and talk about the winner of this thing, and just see, you know, there's some pretty surprising performances today. Not all surprising, but some just nice performances to see from drivers that we're not used to seeing run up front as much as they did today. So we've got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of drivers to talk about, so let's get started. For starters, I want to talk a little bit about the rain out specifically and NASCAR's kind of policy regarding, you know, postponements and stuff, because yesterday it was very interesting on Sunday because the forecast looked like it was pretty slim chances we were going to get the race in anyways, but there was still a chance. There was definitely a chance that they could have raced yesterday. So NASCAR went forward with their typical, typical race day procedure. They were, did driver intros, did all that type of stuff, had the drivers even called to their cars and actually ran some pace laps at one point in the afternoon after a couple hour delay, but ultimately had to shelve the cars and postpone it to Monday. And I thought it was interesting. I saw fans going back and forth on Twitter, kind of trying to determine whether or not it was a good call for NASCAR to kind of try to run the race Sunday, even though they knew they were probably only going to be able to race to halfway, or if it made more sense for NASCAR to just postpone the race right at the start of Sunday. Like Sunday morning, hey guys, it's not happening today, let's just push it to Monday. And I thought it was an interesting debate. Historically, NASCAR has made it very, very clear that they will try to race on Sunday, to the best of their abilities. Postponing a race to the next day or whatever is usually a last resort. And they've proven this time and time again. I remember, the Daytona 500 in 2012, they had to postpone it to Monday. But then Monday, rain delay, they could have postponed it to Tuesday even. Instead, they managed to finish that race like at 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning. So they kept racing through the night on Monday. That's how determined NASCAR is usually to finish races the day they say they're going to finish. So I think going forward, I ran a poll on Twitter. Let me go and look at that. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at Erik17, participate in some of these polls. Now this poll, I think the data is skewed here because I put this poll out there an hour or so before they actually called the race. And as a result, I think that led to I noticed more people voted for the postponed to tomorrow later in the day, like after it had already been postponed. So I think that might have skewed the data here. But for most of the hour or so that I had this up, it was pretty split, pretty 50-50. Some fans like, I guess, when NASCAR postpones the race immediately, just says at the beginning of the day, hey guys, it's really rainy, we're not going to try, let's just postpone it to Monday. I'll be honest, I completely disagree with those people. I like the way NASCAR's done it historically, where they try everything they can to race on Sunday, and if, they'll wait until 8 o'clock at night if they have to. Now in this case, Dover didn't have lights, so that complicated things, but I like that NASCAR tries everything they can to race on Sunday. You think about it, for NASCAR races, people often travel from out of city, out of state, and have to spend money on hotels. They often plan their race weekends months in advance, and so everyone months ago was planning to race and see the race on Sunday, and I think NASCAR owes it to those fans. Those are the fans NASCAR owes it to the most. They owe it to them to try and race on the day they initially advertised. I saw local fans on Twitter like, I decided not even to go to the race because I figured it'd get postponed. It'd be really lame if they actually did race today, and I'm like, I don't know, you're lame for not even trying to go. I think NASCAR prioritizes fans who are traveling from out of town more than they prioritize fans from in town. Like local Dover fans weren't as important to NASCAR as fans who are traveling from out of state to go to Dover, and I think that's the way it should be. Because the fans that are traveling from out of state are spending more money, they have more money at risk. NASCAR did the right thing there. So I don't know. Interesting. We've so far been lucky this year. 11 races in, only one race has been postponed or even significantly delayed by rain at all. So that's pretty good so far for NASCAR. Hopefully we don't have too many more rain delays this year and we don't have to talk about this. Now let's go and look at the top 20 finishers from today's race. This is what we want to spend most of the episode talking about. We'll start, of course, by talking about the winner of today's Gander RV 400 at Dover. Martin Truex Jr. gets his second win of the year, just 11 races into his Joe Gibbs racing career. Already got 2 wins, looking good. And he won this race in dominating fashion, won by about 10 seconds. The race ended with a really long green flag run. I'm not sure if we even had any cautions in stage 3. I think we had one when Hamlin cut a tire. I think that was in stage 3, but other than that, we really didn't see any yellows for most of the final 100 laps or so of this race, which is why the field got very spread out. We saw some green flag pit stops, which led to some interesting strategy, but ultimately Martin Truex Jr., who started in the rear, and that is the first kind of interesting stat that I want to mention from this race, is that The top two finishers in this race, Martin Truex Jr. and Alex Bowman, both started at the rear for failing inspection yesterday. So very interesting that two drivers who started at the rear ended up finishing 1-2 in this race. But Martin Truex Jr., second win of the year for Gibbs, he's establishing himself as a real championship contender. You know, the first few races this year, kind of a slow start for Truex. He was there, like top 5, top 10 usually, but he wasn't really leading laps. But now he has put any doubts to rest at this point. He is looking like a top championship contender. Joe Gibbs Racing continues to assert their dominance over NASCAR this year. That is, 7 wins for that team in 11 races. Hendrick now has 1. Penske, I guess, has 3. So Joe Gibbs Racing, for a while there, it was Penske versus Gibbs. Now it's Joe Gibbs, and it is all Joe Gibbs all the time. Penske's still there. You see Logano's in the top 10, but it's Joe Gibbs Racing right now. And one thing that I'll talk about here, though, is Hendrick Motorsports took their biggest step forward, in my opinion, today, trying to get back to where they once were. Last week at Talladega, they ran pretty well. Obviously finished 1-2 with Chase Elliott winning at Talladega, Alex Bowman finishing second, but I was more impressed with Hendrick Motorsports this week. Talladega, you used to have a fast race car. Super speedway racing is very different from the other 32 races a year. So you can be great at super speedways and bad everywhere else. That's basically how, Front Row Motorsports is. And ultimately, Front Row Motorsports hardly ever makes the playoffs, and if they do, they're never competitive. So I'd rather be like a team that's good at the other 32 tracks than a team that's only good at the 4 super speedway races. So Hendrick Motorsports, though, with the way they ran at Dover today, you can see there are 3 of their drivers in the top 10. Jimmie Johnson just a little further out. But Alex Bowman led a significant amount of laps in this race, which was really impressive. Again, I said he started at the back. They threw out an interesting stat during the Fox broadcast. I didn't know this. Alex Bowman has finished in every single position possible except first in his career. He's finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the way to 43rd at some point in his career, but he's never finished first. I thought that was extremely interesting. Another very interesting detail, very interesting stat to follow. But Chase Elliott with the top 5, William Byron with the top 10, and they all qualified well as well. Hendrick Motorsports, this race impressed me more than last week's race. This is 2 weeks in a row now that Hendrick Motorsports has looked really good. And I'm not just meaning good by modern Hendrick standards. I mean, no, genuinely really good, like old Hendrick standards. They won last week, finished 2 cars in the top 5 this week. This looks like old Hendrick, Jeff Gordon, Jimmie Johnson era Hendrick. But now it's only been 2 weeks, and one of those was a super speedway race. So still take it with a grain of salt. I'm convinced that after that off week, it must have been a very productive off week for Hendrick Motorsports. Looks like they've turned the corner, looks like they're running better. Hopefully this is a sign that they will continue to improve throughout the summer. To wrap things up, though, Martin Truex Jr., second win of the year, of course. Also, another interesting stat, another interesting detail from this race. The only other race at Dover to be run on a Monday was also won by Martin Truex Jr. So Martin Truex really likes it when it rains at Dover, I guess. Alex Bowman, again, very impressive. He's been strong at kind of these concrete, high bank, shorter racetracks. Bristol, remember last year he ran really well at. Dover he was good at last year and then again this year. So Alex Bowman really impressed me today. The fact that he started at the rear and was able to work his way all the way up to the front of the pack like this and lead a significant portion of laps. At one point in this race, before the end of stage 2, I thought maybe this was Alex Bowman's best chance we've ever seen to win. Ultimately, it didn't work out. Really, it's just his car wasn't as good as Truex's car. Like I said, Truex won by 10 seconds. I mean, nobody was in his league. Very important race for Kyle Larson there, finishing 3rd. Dover's been one of his best tracks historically. We knew that. He's had terrible luck, and he's also just performed terribly at a lot of races this year. He's well outside the top 16 in points right now, so we knew Dover was a big opportunity for him. Ran up front, led some laps here and there. Ultimately, a strong 3rd place finish. That's basically feels like a win the way this year's gone for Kyle Larson. It's his first top 5 of the year, if you can believe that. Hopefully, this is a sign of better things to come. Maybe they can start to turn things around. Harvick, another 4th place finish. He's basically lived there in 4th to 5th place this year. Still does not have a win. Kevin Harvick does not have a win this year. Alex Bowman now is closer to getting wins than Kevin Harvick. That's surprising. Not saying Kevin Harvick is bad, but definitely not as dominant as he was last year. I already talked a little bit about Chase Elliott finishing 5th after winning at Talladega last week. He was my pick to win this race. He ended up winning the pole, led some laps, but ultimately fell back to 5th. Still hung in there pretty well. Top 5 is solid. Erik Jones, the Fox broadcast, never talked about Erik Jones in this race. I think they gave him 15 seconds of screen time, but he was basically running 6th to 10th all day long. Finished 6th. Strong day for Erik Jones. He also got a couple of bonus points in those stages, so big for him because he's also outside the top 16 points. This could help him get back in playoff contention. Highest finishing Penske car, Joey Logano. Penske's been really good this year, but Brad Keselowski, looked good early in the race, ran up front a little bit, but he faded. Ryan Blaney was kind of a no-show all race long. He was around the top 10, but never really in it. Joey Logano was the best car on that race team, but even he only 7th, so kind of interesting that Penske didn't look as good as usual. William Byron, already talked about him. Great performance, also good qualifying spot. Good job. He put an actual full race together. A lot of times I feel like with William Byron and usually with Alex Bowman, they'll qualify great this year and then fade and finish 18th. Didn't do that this day for William Byron, so good for him. Clint Bowyer finishes 9th, solid. Kyle Busch continues to extend that top 10 streak. He ties Morgan Shepherd for the most consecutive top 10s to start a season in NASCAR Cup Series history. This is the 11th race in a row now. We're 11 races into the season, and Kyle Busch has finished in the top 10 in all 11 races. That is crazy. It's why he's the points leader. It's why he's on another level compared to the rest of the field right now. He did not have a good showing. And the fact that his teammate dominated this race like he did is concerning to me, that Kyle Busch really was never close to sniffing the front of this pack. But finishing top 10, making the most of what was not a good typical Kyle Busch day, that's what he does. That's why he's so good, and that's why he continues to set records every week this year, it feels like. Daniel Suarez, solid 11th place finish. He's finished 11th or better in all 5 of his Dover starts now in his Cup Series career. One of his best tracks for sure. You see the other Penske guys there, Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch, another solid performance for him. Jimmie Johnson, it's concerning to me that the other Hendrick guys all ran so much better than him, but still he was around the top 10. Not a bad day for Jimmie Johnson. I think that rookie crew chief definitely doesn't help him. I think putting Chad Knaus over on that 24 car has helped William Byron a lot, and I think taking Chad Knaus away from Jimmie Johnson has hurt the 48 just a little bit, but still a solid performance there. You got the other Penske guy, Ryan Blaney. Almirola was just kind of there. Menard just kind of there. Menard, Austin Dillon, the rest of this top 20 here. Matt DiBenedetto, kind of just there, but still not terrible performances for them. Salvage days for a lot of those guys. Roush Fenway had a rough day. Ricky Stenhouse was up running in the top 10 earlier in this thing, faded, blew a tire. That hurt his finish, so Roush with Newman there kind of trying to salvage the day. Not pictured, but Denny Hamlin finished 21st in this race. He also was the other big name driver that ran into issues early in this race. He and Jimmie Johnson almost wrecked on the front stretch. Ultimately, though, Hamlin in the first half of this race just had no handle on that race car, went a lap down, worked his way to get back up on the lead lap, actually got back near the top 10 at one point before cutting another tire, spinning out, and ultimately forced him to finish 21st. So rough day for Denny Hamlin, who's been probably the second best Gibbs car most of this year behind Kyle Busch, but now Martin Truex Jr. with the dominating performance today. You got 3 really good cars leading that Joe Gibbs Racing camp, and Erik Jones, he doesn't have a win this year, but he's had a top 5 at Texas. He's run well at a few tracks. I really think the team, his pit crew specifically, has let Erik Jones down. He's still not too far back. Erik Jones, I expect him to win a race later this year, so Joe Gibbs Racing looks very strong right now. That's really, in a nutshell, that's what I learned at Dover today. Joe Gibbs Racing is at the top of NASCAR right now. Penske's close, and Stewart-Haas is also right there, but it is Joe Gibbs Racing. They have clearly set themselves apart. They are the best race team. They have it all going right now, and it makes sense. Last year, Joe Gibbs Racing had 2 veteran drivers, Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, and a couple young, inexperienced guys with Daniel Suarez and Erik Jones, and they ran okay last year. Kyle Busch was really good last year, but this year, Joe Gibbs Racing got rid of Suarez, who's fine, but he's still young and inexperienced, brought in a veteran with Martin Truex Jr., and you see what he's doing to this team. Martin Truex Jr. has already got 2 wins, and we're 3 months into the season. So Joe Gibbs Racing, adding veterans like Martin Truex Jr. and Cole Pearn, has continued to vault their program above everyone else's, and that's just going to keep happening if Joe Gibbs has these drivers in their stable. And they got another hotshot, Christopher Bell, that could end up in one of their cars at some point soon as well. So Joe Gibbs, they're stacked right now. They are stacked, and it does not look good for the rest of the NASCAR competition. Let's go and put this thing on the groovy gauge. Yeah, that's right. I know. That's exactly why all of you clicked on this video, probably, because you wanted to see the groovy gauge. Well, today's Dover race, it was kind of a tale of 2 different races, to be honest. First half of this race, not a lot of passing. That's pretty typical for Dover. It's tough to pass here often. I think the aero package with the higher speeds and higher downforce probably made it a little harder to pass, I would say. But overall, first half of this race, not too bad. At the battle at the end of stage 2 with Alex Bowman and Kevin Harvick and Martin Truex Jr. was pretty exciting. It was pretty tense for about 20 or 30 laps there. So the first half of this race, pretty darn good. I actually really enjoyed it. Second half of this race, when Martin Truex Jr. kind of took control of this thing, nothing against him, but he just kind of dominated at that point. Nobody really could touch him. Ultimately, I kind of have to weigh these 2 halves. First half of the race was really good. Second half was kind of just bleh. I also think the first half of this race was kind of saved by the fact that you had Alex Bowman up front, you had Chase Elliott up front, you had Kyle Larson up front, guys that I think most fans are rooting for on a typical basis. I think that added to the entertainment value. Like, it was fun for me to see Alex Bowman compete with the big boys for a weekend. I was like, whoa, okay, Alex, I see what you're doing here. I think that added to it. If I actually just look at the racing itself objectively, still not great. Ultimately, I'm going to give this race an even 50% on the groovy gauge. It's kind of just a neutral race. It's a Monday afternoon. The crowd was not bad for a Monday afternoon race, but still, it just kind of felt like it just was, they were only running this race because they were contractually obligated to. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's just because last week's Talladega race had so much buzz and was so much fun to watch, but this race just felt kind of lackluster by comparison. I'll give it an even 50%. Not a bad race. I cannot say it was a bad race because, like I said, early in this thing we had some good battles, and even at the end it was interesting with some of that pit strategy. I thought Suarez or Jimmie Johnson might catch a break with a caution, but we ultimately didn't see that. So it was still not a bad race, but not a great one, and definitely kind of a letdown from last week's Talladega race. But last week's Talladega race was outstanding, so it's hard to really compare to that one. But 50% on the Groovy gauge. I'd be curious to know what you guys think. Give us one, yeah, right there, dash split down the middle. Hope you guys enjoyed this Out of the Groove episode. That's all I got. I got some more episodes planned for this week. I'll talk more about news from Dover. I'll talk about more news that comes up during this week. I got a lot more I want to talk about, but this episode had to keep it kind of short and sweet. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember, you can subscribe if you're new. I do these types of videos every single week, all the time, talking about NASCAR, talking about racing. A lot of fun we have over here, so subscribe if you're new. Follow me on Twitter or Instagram, and Instagram. I always say or, it should be and. Follow me on both, it's free, you know, come on. But thank you for doing that. Also, you can check out down in the description, there are Out of the Groove t-shirts for sale if you want to support the show. Check those out as well, and a thank you to my Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison at GWizOfTheStars, SelfishGifts.com, Mentally Defective, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, Ross Corlett, TheRacingInsiders.com, and the rest of these amazing Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much for your continued support of me and the show. Couldn't do this without you guys. Thank you so much. Like I said, I'll have some new episodes up later this week. Got some big exciting things in the works. Got some announcements to make in the coming weeks. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that because I know I certainly am. Thanks as always for the support, everybody. See you guys again later this week. Have a good one, everyone.